Getting a breast cancer diagnosis is terrifying. Most of us, including me, have no idea what to expect. Now that I'm a little further ahead in my cancer journey, I'd like to share 10 things that I wish I had known at the beginning. Knowing these would have made the first part of that experience a lot easier. If you're a breast cancer patient, or you're watching this because someone you love is a breast cancer patient, then welcome, and I'm sorry you're here. I'm hoping that this information will help you and help ease some of the anxiety that comes with a breast cancer diagnosis. So here are 10 things I wish I'd known right at diagnosis. And stick around till the end because I'm saving the most important for the last. Number 1, getting a treatment plan takes time. Once I was over the shock, I was ready to go. I wanted to get right in there and attack it, throw everything I could at it. I expected that they would hand me a treatment plan and say, okay, you have breast cancer, these are the steps, let's go. But it doesn't work like that. Breast cancer isn't just one cancer. There are a whole bunch of different kinds of breast cancer that depend on sort of the biochemical markers on the tumor. There's other things to consider, like how big is the tumor? Has it spread to lymph nodes? How old are you? There's all kinds of things to consider when developing a treatment plan. So while it takes time, it's actually a good thing because it means that the treatment plan is really tailored to what you need. There is no standard breast cancer. So after your initial biopsy, when they've diagnosed and said that it is cancer, your medical team has some information, but they don't have all the information, and unfortunately, that information comes in steps. Most notably, surgery is sort of the mainstay of cancer treatment. So most people will have surgery at some point. It might come first or it might come after chemo and radiation. But once you have surgery, they actually take out the tumor, they can send it away, and they can study it and really understand what they're working with. In my case, I had surgery first, and after testing, they understood that chemo was something that should be. But the important thing is that they don't know the whole picture until they've been able to look at all these different factors. So for example, I was diagnosed over the Christmas holidays. I didn't have my surgery until February, and it wasn't until early April, late March, that I knew whether or not I would need chemotherapy. Hopefully your timeline is quicker, but be prepared to wait while your medical team gets all the imaging, all the information that they need to make the right decisions for your treatment. So from my experience and speaking with other survivors and patients, I would say that instead of getting a full treatment plan with all the steps at the beginning, what you will likely get is, what is the next step? And once they've done that step and they've evaluated how it goes, then what is the next step? They may start with chemotherapy and see how effective it is before they move on to surgery. They may start with surgery and then analyze the tumor to see whether chemotherapy is warranted. But you're only ever going to learn one step at a time. What is the next step? And that's something to be prepared for. Number 2, diagnosis is in many ways the hardest part. So when I first got diagnosed, I kind of thought, well, I'm not really a cancer patient yet. I don't need all the resources. I was sort of looking to see what was out there, but I was waiting until I was a real cancer patient. I figured out later that actually, psychologically anyway, the hardest time is right at the beginning. The less I knew, the more anxious I was. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if I was going to need a mastectomy or a lumpectomy. I didn't know if I would need chemotherapy or radiation, what stage it was. And not everyone does this, but I chose to tell people right away. I chose to share. And of course, when I shared, they all had these questions like, well, what stage is it? What's the prognosis? What's the treatment plan? And I didn't know. And that sort of highlighted the anxiety I was already feeling. All this to say, if you've been diagnosed, you need support now. You don't need to wait until you're in the system. If you have access to counseling now, that's great. I would recommend accessing it now. If you don't, talk to your medical team and find out what kind of counseling you can access right now. Most of it is free. And this brings me to point number 3, which is I wish I had known what resources were available to me. So in British Columbia, where I am, the BC Cancer Agency has a lot of great resources, but you can't access them until you're sort of in their system. For me, I had to have surgery first, which was outside of the BC Cancer system. So again, diagnosed over the Christmas holidays, and I wasn't really in the cancer system until March or April. So there was a long time when I was feeling anxious and I didn't have access to the kinds of resources I needed. I wasn't even really sure what kinds of resources I would need. Now, there are a ton of organizations out there, and I'm going to make another video highlighting some of them, but two that I think are the most useful for just when you get diagnosed are one called After Breast Cancer Diagnosis. So if you look that up, After Breast Cancer Diagnosis, there's an organization that can pair you up with a patient who's been through it, someone who's similar to you, maybe in your worldview, and you can talk on the phone, you can text, and they have other resources. So this is available for people in the US, and it is a US organization, but it's also available for people in Canada. The other one, and this is exclusive to Canada, is something called inspirehealth.ca. If you go to that URL, you will find all kinds of resources. You have access to counseling, nutrition counseling, exercise, rehab and counseling. There are all kinds of things. They run group classes, they do individual, one-on-one sessions. I really recommend that you go, and they treat people or they help people all over Canada. Number 4, you're going to have to manage other people's emotions. And it sometimes feels like an added burden, but it's just the way it is. So, for example, you're going to need to think really hard about your relationships and decide, who do you want to tell? How much information do you want to give them? And how much information is helpful to them? So the best example is my kids. I wanted to give them all the information they needed to know and they wanted to know without giving them too much or too little. In other words, I wanted to reduce their anxiety. So in that sense, I was managing their emotions. And the same is true for a lot of different loved ones and friends. You'll know who can handle how much. For example, if you have a friend that's in a medical profession, they're probably going to be able to handle more details. Lots of people just kind of want to know the overall sketch of what's happening, like what's the next step. But as unfair as it might seem, you will find that you need to manage the emotions of other people when you talk to them about your diagnosis. So just be aware of that. Number 5, recovery is measured not in days or weeks, but in months or years. So at the very beginning, the breast health nurse told me this is a marathon, not a sprint. And boy, is that true. I don't think it much matters what your treatment plan is. Some people just have surgery. But even in that case, it takes months to emotionally come to terms with what's happening. There are always side effects of whatever treatment you're getting. So there's immediate side effects, and there's almost always some long-term side effects. And then, of course, there's the psychological aspect. I'm never not going to worry about a recurrence, for example. Things won't go back to the same. At the same time, it's July now, and I'm starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm between chemotherapy and radiation. I had surgery already, and I'll have endocrine therapy to deal with down the road. But I've been told that, recovery takes a long time, and I can see it now. The fatigue that I feel from chemotherapy it affects my life quite a bit. And radiation also comes with fatigue. And sometimes endocrine therapy does too. So it's going to be a long road to rebuild. And that's okay, but it's something that you should know. I think that knowing it will reduce the anxiety of feeling like this is taking forever. Number 6, Unfortunately, your schedule is not going to be under your control. Now, this might be a little different for people in the States, but in Canada, you get booked in for appointments and you find out about them sometimes the week before, and you don't have much choice in terms of when you can go. Like, you have to drop everything and go. And for me, this has affected travel plans. There are some things that I wanted to do this year that I couldn't travel because I might get called in for surgery or radiation might be booked. And it's not easy, but it's something to expect. This has got to become your number one priority this year, getting treated so that you can move on. At the same time, you can talk to your medical team if you want to get a little trip in between treatments. But listen to their advice, because if you're really fatigued, you might not enjoy the trip as much as you had hoped. On the other hand, travel can really be a boost. I went for a short trip between surgery and chemotherapy, and it boosted my spirits to see old friends and hang out and sort of feel their support. So it's not impossible, but you won't really be in control of your schedule. And that's something to consider if you're working throughout this as well. I had to drop work for chemotherapy, and I'm now looking to ramp back up. Number 7, cancer treatment is costly. So even in Canada, where we have the treatment itself covered, extended benefits have really saved us in terms of prescriptions and extra costs. There's also travel. If you're not close to a cancer center, you will have to travel for your treatments. Now, you can claim some of these expenses later on. In fact, you can claim quite a few. And once you're in the cancer system, there's usually some sort of patient navigator, financial helper, social worker who can guide you through applications for different grants and different financial help programs. So they do exist. But I think that if I had realized right off the bat that I was going to have to take time off work, I might have pulled back on spending a little bit earlier in the year. So again, it's just something to be aware of. And because money can cause a lot of anxiety, it's something to get on top of right away, just so that you feel in control and you can access some of these resources. You can also contact your National Cancer Center, so the Canadian Cancer Society, for example, and see what is available for you, and just get on top of it as soon as you can, so that causes as little anxiety as possible while you're really trying to focus on your health. Number 8, this is a little bit obvious, but also a little counterintuitive, and that is the treatment feels worse than the disease, for the most part. So for me, I had a lump and it didn't hurt, it was just there. All the sort of pain and suffering has come as a result of the treatment. Now, obviously, I wouldn't have refused the treatment. I'm determined to go through all the steps that I need to do. But it's a little bit tough. It's not the way we think of things. It's not how we understand illness. Usually, we associate illness with pain, and we associate healing with that pain being alleviated. And with cancer, it's the other way around. It's kind of a puzzling thing to wrap your head around. So it's just something to expect. Number 9, some things will never be the same. I'm talking physically in terms of your body, of course, psychologically as well. Every treatment has side effects. Some of them are short-term and some of them are long-term. So ask about those when you talk to your medical team, and just be prepared to know that things will change. And I guess you need to learn as best you can how to accept the fact that your body won't ever be the same, and your perspective on life won't ever be the same. The bonus of that is that your perspective on life might be better. It might be more realistic. It might be more appreciative or joyful or grateful. So While a lot of these things that I'm telling you sound negative, after every trial we go through, we gain new perspective. So as much as you expect the unexpected in terms of treatments and side effects, you can also expect the unexpected in terms of the new perspectives that cancer will give you on your life. And maybe it will illuminate some new goals or some old goals that you just had reasons not to work towards. And number 10, this is the most important thing, and if you take nothing else away from this video, please let it be this. You can do this. It's hard. I'm not gonna lie, it's hard, but you can do this. You need to make yourself number one. You need to know that your number one job right now is healing from cancer. You need to rally support. You need to find your resources, but you can do this. The resources are out there, and you will find the strength to get through this. I kind of knew that at the beginning, but of course I wasn't sure. And now I'm positive and I know I'm stronger. I hope this has been helpful, and if it has, I'd love if you would consider supporting me by liking, subscribing, sharing the video. I make videos about health recovery, mindful consumerism, and creative exploration. So if that sounds interesting to you, I would love to see you in the next video. Until then, stay curious.